These days, everyone seems to be a money expert. From your mother to your mailman, everyone seems to have advice on what you need to do with your money. But what does good financial guidance even look like? And is there any information out there that's tried, true, and tested and stood the test of time? Let's take a look. Money doesn't grow on trees. A penny saved is a penny earned. Making money shows intelligence, but saving money shows wisdom. I actually like that one. The powers that be out there that should know about money, they're constantly telling us. We're looking up, we're learning about money, we're learning about finances, but who really knows? And do the people that we think are in control of our money and should know something about money, is the guidance they're giving us really the honest truth? And is that what's going to help us in our financial future? Well, let's take a look. So you have the Federal Reserve, of course, which issues money. You have banks, which loan out that money. You have Wall Street that wants to invest our money. And then you have big business, of course, which is really good at getting us to spend our money. And, these make up a bulk of the people out there who are controlling the money system, right? That is the system of our money, all parented, of course, by the government. Let's just roll back to the early 20th century because I want to see how these people really are doing with our money and the system of money. If you go back to 1901, there was a fight for the Great Northern Pacific Railway. This led to a massive economic failure in the U.S. In 1907, there was a second economic recession with bank failures involved in that. Of course, there was the Panic of 1910, the recession of 1914, and the financial crisis of 1920. By 1929, we were just beginning the Great Depression. This went all the way to 1939, followed by economic crashes in 1949, 1953, 1960 and 1969. We barely make it into the 70s financially, when in 1971, our great President Nixon saw fit to take us off of the gold standard. Well, when you take a currency off of its gold standard, literally the money becomes backed by nothing. It becomes a fiat currency worth just the paper it's printed on. So the 70s, of course, because of this being off the gold standard, led us to high inflation. And by the early 80s, we entered into another economic recession. By 1987, of course, we hit Black Monday, another massive Wall Street failure. And by the early 90s, we were really in financial trouble. The 90s were a tumultuous time, and it was a huge roller coaster ride of economic failure for many, many countries. We saw financial disaster and economic recessions in Argentina, Asia, Cuba, Ecuador, Finland, India, Mexico, Russia, and Sweden, just to name a few. That might have been actually in alphabetical order. So the 90s was just a very difficult time for money all around the world, and we were in financial crisis for the most part. We entered the 2000s with the highest inflation we had seen to date, and by 07, 08, we saw massive financial failure in the banking and investment side of things due to all these adjustable rate mortgages hitting and people not being able to pay. See, the banking system and Wall Street had over-leveraged themselves with terrible financial products and tranched them all and sold them to other financial institutions, which led them to be so over-leveraged that they were losing money and hemorrhaging cash left and right. They were not able to recover from this, so they used this as an opportunity to go to the U.S. government and ask them for a bailout. This would not be the first time they do this. You see, another thing they did was they had not only packaged up these securities and things and sold them to other financial institutions, but they insured them. When they insured them, they were insuring themselves, not us against failure, not our mortgages, but their debt. And they had carried way too much debt on extremely confusing financial products that they themselves had created but didn't understand. The bailout ask was for $700 billion. I'll say that again, $700 billion. Now, you and I have made some financial debacles in our life, but never to the extreme that these financial experts did in 2008. Of course, from 2010 to current, we have had no less than 18 financial crises around the world, including the COVID-19 pandemic, which hurt a lot of people and sent us in a downward spiral. So where are we today? We are literally in the highest inflationary period that we have ever seen. Things are costing more than they have ever costed. Our money is not going that far, and many people are feeling the effects of all of these disastrous financial decisions. So the truth of the matter is, if the people we think are running the money of the world are running it so well, why are we in this position? And who can we trust? What financial information and knowledge or advice is out there that would help carry us through these financial storms? I think we can all agree now that there are going to be financial storms, and they're going to be coming at us full force all the time. Literally every few years, something is happening, whether it's in our backyard or somewhere else around the world. So what advice stands true? What advice stands the time when it comes to our finances? Well, there's a few things that the wealthy do and adhere to no matter what that keep them on an even keel and tried and true during a financial storm. The first one is they know you cannot outspend your income. In the simplest terms, if you're making $1,000 a week and you continue to spend $1,050, you're creating a deficit. You are creating a debt, and that debt is going to catch up with you just like it does everyone, like it caught up with all these financiers in 07 and 08. The bigger the number, the more you're spending above your earning, the more financial trouble you will be in down the line. And you certainly will not be able to quickly recover during a financial storm. You might not be able to recover at all. The next thing the wealthy understand is that you have to budget. But you don't budget because you're in a financial storm. You don't budget because you're in good times. You just budget. You know your money. You know what you have coming in. You know what needs to go out. You don't overspend, and you put the money in the different buckets. Especially, you know that you need a long-term category to be able to bail yourself out and not ask for help. And it's a good idea to have a POM account, which some people refer to as an emergency fund. I like to call it a peace of mind account so that I can sleep at night. And when financial turbulence hits, if I need to go into my long-term savings or need to reach into a POM account, then I can do that. The next thing the wealthy understand and subscribe to, and I'm going to frame this out, literally, is that they understand saving is crucial. Think about those three words. Saving is crucial. It is not mandatory, but it is important and it is crucial. No one's telling them to save. They're just saving. They're saving when times are good. They're saving when times are bad. They're saving so that if a financial turbulence hits the economy, they're able to carry themselves safely out of that storm into smoother waters. So they understand that you save all the time. Most people don't have that. If times are good, they're spending down to zero. And the reason why they're spending down to zero is because times are good. They're saying everything's fine right now and I have the money, so I'm going to spend. And they aren't putting the money in buckets, and they certainly aren't saving. So if a financial storm hits, they are on edge from day one. When an announcement's made on the news, when the government says something, when their boss comes to work and says there's going to be layoffs or they're going to cut back your hours, you are immediately in a financial panic because you have not saved. Your financial storm starts right then. The next thing the wealthy understand that's going to carry them through the worst of financial times and the most turbulent storms is that they know their investment. They only invest in things they know and understand. Most people don't get that. They want to be an investor. They want to put money here and there. They'd like to spread it around. They want to earn money while they sleep, but they don't really understand the investment. So they just blindly put money here and there. And because the investment might be confusing or they might not understand it, when the shite hits the fan, they get scared. And that fear causes them to lose money, pull out, get out of an investment early, and really fail miserably. Financial storms are going to happen. They're going to happen even during good times. But if you make an investment that you don't understand, similar to what happened in 07, 08, these financiers had created investments that were so diluted and so complicated that they didn't even know what they were selling. And they packaged it up and sold it to people who didn't know what they were buying. And this caused a massive panic, and overnight the market had a downturn and a big change, and people lost a lot. And that's why they needed to go and ask for help in the form of a bailout. It's no different than if your friend's a real estate investor and you're not a real estate investor, but he invites you in and says, hey, do you want to buy a 3-family unit with me, and we'll rent them out and we'll both make some money, and I understand, so I will run it. Well, you put a little money in, and for a while everything is good. But the first time that he calls you up and says, hey, 2 of our tenants left and we've got to cover the mortgage, I need you to put a little bit more money in. Now you get scared. And you don't understand that investment, and you don't understand how that could possibly happen. You thought this was just going to work and it was just going to be gravy all the way. And when it wasn't, you got scared, and maybe you pull out. Maybe you lose your investment. Maybe you lose your money literally through fear and not understanding how the investment works. There's going to be financial highs and there's going to be financial lows. And when a storm hits, you need to be able to cover that and stay in the game. So don't get involved in something that you don't understand. One of the things that I say when people come into one of my businesses, one of my retail shops, is I say, you don't see me selling knitting supplies. Well, the reason why you don't see any knitting supplies in any of my shops is because I don't know anything about knitting supplies. You could literally back up a 10-ton truck full of merino wool and say, hey, I can give you a great deal on this merino wool for you to resell. I wouldn't know what it's worth. I wouldn't know the first thing about buying and selling merino wool. I also don't have a marketplace for that. I don't have a place where I could turn around and sell it, and I wouldn't know whether I was buying right, whether I was selling right, and I certainly don't have the buyers for it. So for me, I don't invest in knitting supplies because, well, I don't know anything about knitting supplies. I do invest in what I know and what I'm comfortable with. Now, when a financial storm comes and hits one of my businesses, I understand the business well enough that I know how to make chess moves to keep us afloat and keep us on an even keel, even during tough times. So it's very important that you understand investments if you're going to make them. Even if your investment is just you, even if you're investing in you, you're saving your money, you're using your job to create assets, you are investing in you on a daily basis. So understand where's the best place to put your money. The final point I'd like to make with the wealthy and being able to weather a storm and keep your ship on an even keel is that they understand how to keep their debt to income ratio low and keeping their debt short term. They don't want to go into a financial storm knowing they have so much debt that if the shite hits the fan, that they're not going to be able to get out of it in quick form. So what they do is they're not going to take on a lot of debt or more that they can handle in the worst case scenario. One of the problems of the 2007-2008 crisis is that the debt just got too much and it was way, way, way too high. So they were kind of right on their edge of teetering and falling off of the edge because they couldn't bail themselves out, which is why they had to go to the government for a bailout. When things happened, like the COVID-19 pandemic, I was running several businesses. And one of them, the state came in and said, hey, listen, you can't be open to the public anymore. So I was in a plaza in that business with about 30 different businesses or so. And we not only managed to carry ourselves through that year and a half, but we also doubled the size of our business during that time. At the end of the COVID pandemic, most of the businesses in our plaza had gone under. There was about 6 left out of 30. And 2 of us had doubled our business. We had actually moved into bigger locations in that plaza because those spaces became available. In other words, we could carry our businesses and carry our finances during the storm. Why? Because we had done all of these other things. We had realized that saving is crucial. Having a budget is crucial. And we were able to have so little debt that we could cover that debt even if our doors were closed, even if we couldn't run our businesses as usual. So we just did what we could online, and I did what I could in store, and literally at the end of it all, we came out ahead. We doubled the size of our business during a financial storm. So I believe it's key. Success and failure both leave clues. Remember that. And we can learn from the mistakes of everyone who's come before us because they've left clues. I'd like to close with a phrase that my father would always tell me growing up. And he would say, Daniel, if you can learn from your own mistakes, that's great. But if you can learn from the mistakes of others, that's even better. So I ask you to look through history and look through your own history to see what you're doing and how you can improve and learn from the mistakes of others, because success and failure both leave clues. My name is Daniel F. Margasa. You are watching The Almost Criminal Millionaire. And if you enjoy the topic of money and the health and wealth of your finances, then please like and subscribe for more.